December 7th, 1885. Bass Reeves was outnumbered 12-1. The Rufus Buck Gang had sent their deadliest crew. They cornered him in an abandoned cabin in Indian Territory. No backup, no way out. Bass was 47 years old, the most feared lawman in the West. But everyone expected the same ending: Bass Reeves dead in a cabin. What they didn't know, Bass Reeves didn't play by anybody's rules. 90 minutes later, only one of those 12 men walked out alive, and the message he delivered made Rufus Buck, a man who'd killed over 30 people, go pale. This is the story of the night Bass Reeves became untouchable. To understand what happened that night, you need to understand Indian Territory in 1885. This wasn't the romanticized Wild West of dime novels. This was 74,000 square miles of lawlessness. Outlaws from every state fled here because local law couldn't touch them. Only federal marshals had jurisdiction. And the most effective federal marshal was a black man named Bass Reeves. Bass had arrested over 2,000 outlaws by 1885. He spoke multiple native languages. He could track a man across solid rock. He was a master of disguise, once posing as an outlaw for months to infiltrate a gang. And he never, ever missed with his Winchester rifle. White outlaws hated him, not just because he was good at his job, because every time a black man in a badge dragged a white criminal to justice, it shattered their belief in racial superiority. The Rufus Buck Gang hated him most of all. Rufus Buck was a Creek and African-American outlaw who led a multiracial gang of killers. But don't mistake him for some kind of freedom fighter. Buck's gang murdered families, assaulted women, burned homesteads. They were terrorists, plain and simple. And Bass Reeves had been systematically destroying them. In 2 years, Bass arrested 14 Buck Gang members. He tracked them through rivers to avoid leaving trails. He outsmarted their ambushes. He walked into their hideouts alone and walked out with prisoners in chains. By December 1885, Rufus Buck had enough. He called a meeting at his stronghold in the Arbuckle Mountains. 20 men showed up, the core of his operation. Buck stood before them, rage burning in his eyes. "Bass Reeves has made us look like fools," Buck said. "Every time one of our men gets arrested, it's by him, a black lawman, dragging white men to justice. Do you know what that does to our reputation?" The room murmured agreement. "I'm putting up $5,000. Dead. Not arrested, dead." One of Buck's lieutenants, a killer named Jim July, leaned forward. "He's too smart, too careful. Every ambush we've tried, he's seen coming." Buck smiled. "Then we don't ambush him on the trail. We ambush him where he sleeps." December 6th, 1885. Bass Reeves received a tip. A farmhouse near the Red River was sheltering 3 wanted murderers. The informant was reliable, a Creek woman Bass had helped years ago when white outlaws tried to steal her land. Bass saddled his horse and rode out alone. That was his style. He worked solo because he trusted his instincts more than he trusted backup that might panic in a firefight. He reached the location just after sunset, but something felt wrong. The cabin was too quiet. No smoke from the chimney. No horses tied outside. No tracks except old ones, weeks old. Bass's hand moved to his Winchester. He'd been a lawman long enough to recognize a trap. But he also knew something most people didn't. Sometimes you spring a trap on purpose, because traps reveal who set them. Bass dismounted, tied his horse 100 yards back in the trees, and approached the cabin on foot. The door was unlocked. He pushed it open slowly. Empty. One room, dirt floor, broken furniture, and a single lantern hanging from the ceiling, already lit. That's when he heard it. The sound of safeties clicking off, rifles being cocked, 12 different metallic clicks from 12 different directions. Men stepped out of the shadows. They'd been hiding in the rafters, behind overturned tables, in corners. 12 armed outlaws, all pointing guns at Bass Reeves. Jim July stepped forward, grinning. "Marshal Reeves, Rufus sends his regards." Bass stood there, hands at his sides, Winchester still slung over his shoulder. He looked around the room slowly, counted. 12 men. He looked back at July. "That all he sent?" July's grin faded. "What? 12 men? That's insulting. I've arrested 20 in one night before." The room went tense. These weren't ordinary outlaws. These were killers, men who'd murdered children. And Bass Reeves was talking to them like they were nothing. July raised his rifle. "You got about 5 seconds to beg for your life." Bass tilted his head slightly. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "You're making a mistake." "What mistake? You're about to be dead." "The mistake," Bass said slowly, "is thinking I didn't know this was a trap." Every gun in that room shifted nervously. July glanced at the door. Nothing. Looked back at Bass. "You're bluffing." Bass smiled for the first time. "Then shoot." Nobody shot. Because here's what Rufus Buck's men didn't understand. Bass Reeves had been fighting for survival his entire life. Born into slavery in Arkansas, escaped during the Civil War after beating his master unconscious for trying to whip him. Lived with Creek and Seminole tribes in Indian Territory for years, learning to hunt, track, and survive. He'd fought Confederate soldiers, bounty hunters, lynch mobs, and outlaws for 40 decades. 12 racist killers in a cabin? He'd seen worse. July's finger tightened on the trigger. Last chance. Bass moved. What happened next, nobody could fully explain afterward. The one survivor's testimony was fragmented, confused. But here's what we know. Bass didn't go for his gun. He went for the lantern. One swift motion, the hanging lantern shattered against the floor. Fire spread across the oil-soaked wood. And in that split second of chaos, Bass dropped flat. The first shots came wild, panicked, men shooting at shadows, at movement, at each other in the confusion. July screaming, "Hold your fire! Hold your fire!" But fear doesn't listen to orders. In the darkness and smoke, Bass became something else. He knew how to fight in chaos. These men didn't. They were used to ambushing unarmed families, terrorizing defenseless farmers. Bass Reeves was neither unarmed nor defenseless. One by one, you could hear them going down. Not from gunshots. Bass didn't waste ammunition. He used his fists, used their panic, used the fact that they were shooting each other in the darkness. A scream, a body hitting the floor, another gunshot, another scream. July tried to rally them. "The door! Get to the door!" But Bass was already there. The violence lasted maybe 3 minutes. 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours. Then, silence. When the smoke cleared and the fire burned itself out, here's what was left. 11 bodies. Not all dead, but all down. Broken bones, gunshot wounds from friendly fire, unconscious, bleeding, and one man sitting against the wall, hyperventilating, gun still in his shaking hand. A young outlaw named Charlie Wickett, the youngest of the crew, 22 years old. Bass Reeves stood over him, barely winded. His coat was torn, his knuckles were bleeding, but he was very much alive. Charlie tried to raise his gun. His hand shook so badly he dropped it. Bass kicked it away. Then he did something Charlie never expected. He pulled out his canteen and handed it to him. "Drink." Charlie stared at the canteen like it might be poisoned. "Why?" "Because you're going to deliver a message, and I need you alive to do it." Charlie drank, his hands trembling. "What message?" Bass reached into his coat and pulled out a playing card, the ace of spades. He placed it on the floor in front of Charlie, then pulled out his knife. He cut his own palm, let the blood drip onto the card. "You tell Rufus Buck this: Indian Territory isn't for sale. Tell him if he sends more men, I'll send more cards. I'm collecting a full deck." Bass leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And Charlie, you tell him something else. Tell him Bass Reeves could have killed all 12 of you, but I let you live. Not because I'm merciful, because I want Rufus to understand something." "What?" "That I'm better than him, that I don't kill unless I have to, that I stand for law, not murder, and that every man he sends, I'll give them the same choice, surrender or suffer." Bass stood up, walked to the door, paused. "One more thing. If Rufus wants me dead, tell him to come himself, man to man, because sending boys to do a coward's work won't ever be enough." December 8th, 1885, 9:47 a.m. Charlie Wickett stumbled into Rufus Buck's camp in the Arbuckle Mountains. He was covered in soot and blood. His ribs were broken. He could barely walk. Rufus was eating breakfast when Charlie collapsed in front of him. "Where are the others?" Charlie couldn't speak. He just shook his head. "Dead? All of them?" Not all dead, but down. All down." Rufus stood slowly. His lieutenants gathered around, silent, watching. "How?" Charlie reached into his jacket with trembling hands, pulled out the ace of spades, still stained with Bass's blood. He placed it on the table in front of Rufus. He said, "Indian Territory's not for sale. He said if you send more men, send more cards. He's collecting a deck." The camp went silent. Rufus Buck stared at that card for a long time. His men waited for orders, waited for Rufus to unleash hell, to send 50 men to hunt Bass Reeves down. Instead, Rufus picked up the card, studied it. Then he did something nobody expected. He laughed. Not a happy laugh, a resigned laugh. "He's got guts, I'll give him that." One of his lieutenants stepped forward. "Boss, we can't let this." Rufus held up his hand. "You know what it costs to go to war with someone who's not afraid to die? Someone who's smarter than you? Someone who has the law on his side?" He shook his head. "It costs everything. And for what? Pride?" Rufus dropped the card into the fire, watched it burn. "We're done in Indian Territory. Pull everyone out. Move operations to Texas." The decision shocked everyone. Rufus Buck, a man who'd killed over 30 people, who'd never backed down from anyone, backed down? Why? Because Bass Reeves had done something even outlaws respected. He'd proven he was willing to die for his principles, that he was smarter, tougher, and more dangerous than any of them. And men like that, you don't fight them. You either kill them or you leave them alone. Rufus couldn't kill him. The Rufus Buck Gang fell apart within 3 months. Without Indian Territory as their base, they scattered. By August 1896, Rufus and 4 gang members were captured, tried, and hanged for their crimes. Bass Reeves continued serving as a marshal for 20 more years. He arrested over 3,000 outlaws in his career. He was shot at countless times, but never hit. He only killed 14 men in the line of duty, and every one was ruled justified. He never spoke publicly about that night in December 1885, but people close to him said he kept that ace of spades, framed it, hung it in his home. A reminder: respect isn't given, it's earned. December 7th, 1885, 12 men walked into a cabin, 1 walked out, and the West learned a lesson that echoed for generations. Bass Reeves wasn't just a lawman, he was a reckoning. If this story of courage, intelligence, and unshakable justice inspired you, hit that subscribe button. We're bringing you the forgotten legends of Bass Reeves, the stories history tried to bury. Drop a like if you believe Bass Reeves was the baddest lawman the West ever saw. And in the comments, let me know, what would you have done if you were Rufus Buck? More legendary stories coming soon. Don't miss it.